Hey, hey, hey. And StreamYard is telling me that it is show time. So, what will happen here is that I have just kicked off a weekly live stream. I hope it's weekly because this is the first time that I'm doing it. So, if you don't know me, if you've never seen me before and you wonder who the heck is this person who just pops up in my feed. My name is Josephine Warner, and I'm a former corporate executive turned entrepreneur and business growth strategist. And I love LinkedIn, and that is why we're here today, because I am going to share my 5-step framework with you of how you can turn your visibility into clients. So if you are with me here live, I will see some comments, I hope. So if you're here with me live, then make sure you add that in the comments so that I can see some live questions coming in. I was a little bit overwhelmed about the number of people that have registered on LinkedIn. I had over 60 people registered on LinkedIn, even though this was a very spontaneous idea from me. And the reason why this is spontaneous, maybe see if I can do that here. So the reason why I came up with this idea was that I shared my 5-step framework with the Israel coaches last week. And I got some amazing response on the framework. And I was like, why don't I share it with a little bit more people? So I have shared the same framework with over 3,000 coaches already. So it's not as if it's a new framework. It's a proven framework. It's the same framework I follow myself. It's the same framework that my clients follow. And we all get amazing results. So I was sharing this framework with the Israel clients and got some amazing results from that. So if you're here with me, because this is a live stream and I'm streaming live to Facebook, to LinkedIn, and to YouTube, actually, why go small when you can go big? So if you're here with me, and I hope I see some comments actually, if there are any comments coming in, add your comments into the chat. Somehow only see YouTube. I can't see LinkedIn. That's weird. Well, anyways, if you had comments, on LinkedIn, I will make sure that I respond to those comments after this live if I can't see any comments coming in while I'm live. Oh, now I have someone here. So thank you so much here. So Onediet and Fust, looking forward to your insights. I love having you here, Rosita. It's so lovely to see you here. And then so Rosita's dialing in from YouTube, so that's why I probably saw it. So if you're here from LinkedIn, I promise I will respond to your comments afterwards because I can't see them. I'm so sorry about that. Anyways, so let's move into the framework. I think my slides might be a little bit tiny, so if they are too small, then let me know. I don't want to do this view though. Let me share it with you, see if I can share that. Because that just looks weird, right? So this one is a good one. This is my mastery checklist. If you want to optimize your profile and don't really know what steps to take, you can download my mastery checklist. It's a step-by-step checklist on what you need to do when it comes to optimizing your LinkedIn profile. But my framework goes deeper than that. Because maybe if you feel that you have been on on Instagram, you've been on Facebook, you're trying to stand out, but you don't really manage to stand out, you're consistently creating, but your income doesn't show the results of that creation. You might be a little bit exhausted of trying to do it all. Well, let me tell you that you're actually in the right place. So you're giving away amazing content, but no one might be buying. And I'm going to cover exactly that, why that is, in step 1 of my framework, actually, that how giving is not working anymore. It has to be a little bit different, right? So we are going to look into what you can do differently, because the framework is there to help you, to guide you, to let you know what works, what doesn't work. But it's also about the important shifts that you need to make to actually move into the piece of not only being visible, but also turning that visibility into paying clients. So I'm just moving away from these slides. So today we're talking about LinkedIn. So this is for you who knows that LinkedIn is the place for you to be. But you saw that Rosita, for example, is here from YouTube too. It works actually on all the channels too, not necessarily on YouTube because it's not about creating videos, but it's more about like the different types of content that you can create, also about the engagement that is so important and things that you need to think about. So how do I know this? Well, I have a free Facebook group, and every time someone joins into my Facebook group, we ask them three different questions. And one of the questions is, what are your current challenges? And another question is, so how would you want to feel instead? And out of those, I think we have around 800 people inside of the Facebook group. 563 of them have given their response to me that they do want to get, most of them want to get more leads. They want to get more clients. They want to make, sometimes they say 10K, 50K, whatever. The income is important. So why is it so important to make revenue? It's because when you make revenue, you can make a bigger impact. So if this is how you're feeling currently, that you're trying everything, but it's not really working, rest assured that 563 others are feeling exactly the same way that you're feeling. So let's talk about LinkedIn. So why is LinkedIn the place to be? Well, first of all, we have over 1 billion users on LinkedIn. 1 billion people are on LinkedIn. However, only 2% of that 1 billion are actually creating content regularly on LinkedIn. And by creating content regularly, that means that they post at least once per week. Only 2%. So even if you might feel today that it feels a little bit crowded, it feels a little bit saturated, you don't necessarily know if this is even worth it to be on LinkedIn, let me assure you that 98% are not creating content on LinkedIn, or at least not regularly. So if you do create content regularly on LinkedIn, you will easily be part of the 2% who actually are able to stand out in comparison to so many others. And if we talk about algorithms, for example, we can't really control the algorithm, but what we can do on LinkedIn, we can actually be a little bit more in control of it. Because when you look at your Instagram, for example, or TikTok, if you're on TikTok, and what you see in your feed are things that actually interests you, which in my case is why I so often get wedding dances, for example, or cute kittens, or babies for eating weird stuff for the first time. So the algorithm on those other platforms, including YouTube to a certain extent, is actually based on your interests. Whereas on LinkedIn, the algorithm is based on your content is shown first to your first connections. And then if they like what you're doing, it will also be pushed out to be shown to their connections, so meaning your second connections. So when you're building your LinkedIn, if you take into consideration that you're actually building it for your audience, it will be so much easier to reach the right people. So by that, what I mean by that is that in comparison to all the other social media platforms, LinkedIn is the easiest and simplest way to actually stand out online in comparison to all of the other platforms. And it will also be easier to create consistent and predictable income for you without paid ads. So what do we then talk about? Well, I have this framework that I call the Stand Out to Sell framework, and it consists of 3 different pieces. The first piece is to get visible. The second piece is to get trusted. And the third piece is that when you have the visibility, when you have the trust, it is so much easier to get paid. And Rosita just say, I need to learn how to show up consistently. And we all need that, right? Sometimes life comes in between and we totally fall off the content creation horse or whatever we want to call it. And that is absolutely different. By the way, Rosita is doing great on YouTube. So if you don't follow her on YouTube yet, then that could be someone that you would want to follow too. I'm going to hide that. Okay. So how do we now do this, right? How do we get visible? How do we build trust so that we can be paid more easily? Oh, hi, Leslie. So happy to see you. And that is good that I got a comment from LinkedIn, because that means that LinkedIn also works. So hi, Leslie. So happy to have you here. And yes, trust is fundamental. Without trust, it will be very hard to actually make that revenue. Because even if you're visible, even if you have the know, if you have the like, but you don't have the trust, you will not be able to get paid as easily. So Number one, to become visible is the door to you, the door to your business, the door to what it is that you're doing is through your content. And I'm not talking about any type of content, but we're talking about content that converts. Because creating content over and over and over again, but not converting anyone, that is just creating noise, right? And before AI, we could create a lot of how-to content, but that doesn't necessarily work any longer because anyone can put into ChatGPT, how do I do this? How do I do that? So you need to create different types of content that actually goes beyond the how-to and rather creates the story. We talk about storytelling, we talk about sharing concepts of how things work. So, so we have Angela here. Yes, we can see you on LinkedIn. Yeah, I love that. But I thought I couldn't see the comments from LinkedIn. So I'm so happy to see you here. And I'm so happy to see you too, Leslie, or see your comment because I unfortunately can't see you. But anyways, so when we talk about content that converts, in order for us to be able to tick all the different boxes, because if you only create one type of content all the time, you will not be able to move into the conversion piece of content. So when we talk about that, we talk about 4 different pillars. And I'm not going to go too deep into these 4 different pillars, but these 4 pillars, what it is that we're talking about is educational type of content. And there, yes, absolutely, the how-to content comes in. So that is where you, for example, can share how to get a new job fast, or whatever it might be, depending on the niche that you're in and depending on the audience that you want to attract. The second piece is inspirational content, and who but Mel Robbins is the best at creating inspirational content. But if you're only creating inspirational content, except if you are Mel Robbins, of course, then that will also be very difficult to land in that trust bucket. When we talk about inspirational content, that can be case studies, for example, that can be where you share your own story, and that can be different types of content that you share when it comes to inspirational stories. The third pillar is the solution-based content. And Katja says, I'm watching from LinkedIn too, so I'm so happy that you are here. So when we talk about solution-based content, that is when we talk about why is my solution, why is your solution superior to all of the other solutions? What is it that you do that is different compared to anyone else? Why should someone come to you and not go to one of your peers or competitors instead? And when we talk about solution-based content, as you can understand, if we only talk about solution-based content all day long, every single day, our impressions and our engagement will actually go down. However, we have to talk about solution-based content because otherwise we're not going to turn that know, like, and trust into paid clients. And the third piece is authority-based content. That is where you are seen as the authority and as the expert that you are in your piece of content. So, for example, when I shared in the presentation earlier here, when I shared a picture of me doing the presentation in front of Esra's 200 coaches, they actually have over 2,000 coaches, I think, but there were 200 coaches who attended that presentation or those presentations. That is authority-based content that places me as a specialist that I am allowed to teach about LinkedIn, for example. So those are the different types of content you need to consider when you create content that converts. That does not mean that you do like one educational post or one inspirational post or one solution-based post. Often these are like a little bit like woven into each other. They cross each other so that you can, the content that you just have a little bit like an eye on this. Don't overcomplicate this. If you get an idea and you think that I definitely want to share about this, share about it, right? So don't think in terms of, is this educational content or is this solution-based content or whatever it might be, but just share. This is more like a guidance if you don't really know where it is. So Leslie says it goes back to trust. It absolutely does, right? And it builds your credibility, which is so important. especially also if many of us here are probably former corporate employees, or we are currently in our corporate roles, and you might want to switch out of your corporate role and might want to do something different. You still have credibility, which is when we look at the authority-based content, you can actually share content about things that you did in the past that you might think that it's not relevant for your current role. So what type of content can you share? Maybe you were a teacher before. Maybe you have hosted bigger events before. Maybe you've done big trainings in your corporate career. What type of content can you share that is actually authority-based content? And then if you're here and you don't really know what to do, then I suggest you take a picture, because that is what I'm going to do now. That I'm taking a picture, and that way I have content that I will share afterwards, that I did my first live, and that is how easy that you can actually share, that you can create content. So Angela is sharing the buckets. We have the inspirational content, we have the solution-based content, and we have the authority-based content. So what are the shifts that we think about when we talk about content that converts? Well, it's all about clarity, that clarity beats creativity. It's not just here to teach, but it's actually here to build trust and pre-sell what it is that you're selling. You don't want to end up on those calls where people are like, so what is it that you do? That is the type of content that you want to create. And also think in terms of, it's not about creating one post that goes viral and then it's done and dusted, right? You need to continue going. One of my clients, he created a post that went very viral. The last time I heard it had over 130,000 views. But getting a post that goes viral doesn't create instant sales if you don't do anything about those views and impressions and connections. So what did he do then? Well, he reached out to those people who seemed like they could be a good match, and then he created sales discussions out of that. And it is part of the framework too. But it's not yet. It's also about engagement. So the first step was content that converts. The second step is engagement. So what do I talk about when I talk about engagement? Well, there are 3 different types of engagement. The first one is engaging in your own post. The second one is engaging in other people's posts. And the third one is engaging in the direct messages. And that is exactly what Matthias did. He engaged in his own post. He responded to other people in their posts, and he engaged in the direct messages. So Angela is commenting here. She took a pic. I hope it was someone else who took a picture while we were taking the picture. And we have Sven here with us. We have Katja here. And we have Leslie. And Sven asked me, how long do I think this will continue? I could probably continue forever, Sven. So I hope you got your tea and your cookies. No, I don't have time to continue for as long, because I have another appointment later. But I will talk through the framework, quickly go through the framework. And you can go back and rewatch this if you want to, if I go too fast through it. So the different types of engagement is so important, because what I see often is that people totally forget about engagement. They put something out there, a post out there, and then they're really disappointed because no one likes it. There is no engagement, nothing happening. And the reason might be because you haven't been engaging. So make sure you build up an engagement strategy by connecting with other people, commenting in other people's posts, being there for others, and you will make sure that they comment on your stuff too. And we tell people to connect with other commenters and not focus on my ideal clients, because if your ideal clients are what I call observers, some people call them lurkers, they will not reach out to you, right? They will not be the first person who comment. They will not be the first person who like. That is why it's so important to make your content easy to engage in. Ask easy questions. Make it easy for people to read. Make it easy for people to engage. And then you return the favor to them. So you said continue to be active. Do you mean, Sven, after posting maybe? So what we usually say is what we usually say is, before you post, make sure that you are there 15 minutes or something before, so you warm up the algorithm a little bit, then you post, then your post goes live, and then you start engaging in your own post. I usually add 2 to 3 comments in my own post, because that also encourages people to see, oh, it is actually okay to comment. You don't want to be the first person to comment on someone else's post, right? So make sure, or you do want to be the first person to comment on someone else's post, but not everyone thinks like that. So make sure you add 2 to 3 comments on your own post, so that people feel that it is okay to comment here. And then what we usually do is like 30 to 45 minutes. It totally depends on the time that you have, but rather make sure that you have a little bit of time before, rather make sure that you have time after you've posted, because posting and ghosting is not working, right? So make sure you are there, warming up the algorithm a little bit. The time now that a post is alive, or that you get impressions on a post, has actually extended compared to what it was before. So make sure you go back in every now and then and check your post, right? The third, so the shift here, what we need to think in terms of engaging people, is to actually think in terms of connecting with our people first, because conversations will lead to conversions. So don't think in terms of, I'm going to connect with this person, I'm going to sell the heck out of them. Rather think in terms of, this is a super interesting person, I would love to connect with them, I would love to learn a little bit more about them. So make sure you connect with the people first, and then you're actually potentially converting them. Not every one of your connections, and we're going to move into the connections, actually is a step 3. Not every one of your connections is going to be a client. Not every one of your connections is going to be a collaboration partner. Not everyone in your connections is going to be like having an amazing DM conversation with you. Some people you will connect with, and then you'll never hear from them again. But rather think in terms of, and that is why we have a little bit like a bar history here with the drinks. People make it a little bit awkward. But why don't you think in terms of, I'm at an amazing networking event, and if someone comes up to me and asks me, hey, Angela, hey, Leslie, how do you feel? Why are you here? How do you feel? Without being like sleazy, don't ask, how is your LinkedIn game going? Because that is like a super pitchy thing. Or what are your challenges? Or what are your goals for the next 6 months? But be normal, be like you would at a networking event. Don't be weird. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Actually, connect with people. Show an interest in people. Not only show an interest in people that, oh, I'm going to sell you this thing. I'm going to solve this problem for you, even though I don't necessarily know if you have the problem. You don't know if people have the problem that you want to sell, right? Or that you want to help them solve. Not until you have really connected with them. And maybe they have already invested in someone else's services to help them solve the same thing that you want to help them solve. Be interested in your connections instead. So Leslie says, loving the acknowledgement, it means a lot. And Angela says, conversations lead to conversions. Exactly. Okay, so when we talk about connections, rather have quality over quantity. I know that many people are like sending DMs, or having people sending DMs for them, or sending connection requests for them. That is not going to do the right job for you. You rather want to think in terms of quality and not quantity. One of my clients, Sarah, has around 1,200 connections on LinkedIn, and she just closed 5 new clients, right? So you don't have to have loads and loads of connections. It is important that you have the right type of connections, that you have commenters in your commenters in your audience, so that other people actually see your stuff. That is super important. So I actually managed to click the wrong thing here. So Leslie says, some people you will just naturally connect with. Exactly. And it will be so much easier. And by the way, I was at an event earlier this morning, a live in-person event. And some people I was actually already connected with on LinkedIn, and then we reconnected. And then it's also so important that I do love LinkedIn, but it's when you are at these live events, how do you stay connected afterwards? Well, you connect with each other through LinkedIn, and then you can always follow up with those people um, a week later, 2 weeks later. But it's not only about you only do LinkedIn or only do live events. Do a mixture of both. That is actually a great thing. So this one shouldn't come as a surprise to you. Here we talk about the profile optimization. And the reason why the profile optimization is so important is because LinkedIn, how to say it, like they want to show content to people that is from an expert and from an authority. And how can you prove that you're an expert and an authority? Well, you have an optimized and you have a complete profile. And so many people think that, oh, my profile is good enough. But if you would Google yourself, your LinkedIn profile would most likely come pretty high up. And if you click on the link to your LinkedIn profile, if you were your own prospect, would you then say, I know exactly what it is that you're doing, and I would love to work with you? If that's not the case, well, then you might need to optimize your profile to make it crystal clear to actually who you are, what it is that you do, who you help, how you help them. But I also want to make it crystal clear that you are a person and people want to connect with you. So I spoke to Maria, one of my clients, earlier this morning, and we were talking about her about section. I said, I want you to make it more personal so that the person who reads it feels that this is me. And then she said, should I make it more about my masterclass? And I was like, no, I don't want that, because I want you to be personal in it so that people think in terms more of like an icebreaker. Because only 3 to 4% actually click on the see more of an about section. And I think the reason for that is because often they are so boring that people don't even take the time to click the read more. But you want it to intrigue people to actually want to click read more. So the first 3 lines are super important of your about section. And then when they do click read more, you want to reward them for actually clicking read more, not getting a cold pitch slap in the face because they click the read more and then you lose them forever. But think in terms of a landing page of your whole profile so that it is optimized. So we have Katja who says here, I can relate about connecting in real life after LinkedIn. Yeah, exactly, Katja. That is how we connected. That is how we met for the first time, and we have a lunch set up. Precisely, says Leslie, this is great. So I am continuing here. So when we talk about optimizing your profile, think in terms of clarity, because if you make it confusing, people will not buy, they will not invest. If you are someday you're talking about yoga, for example, the next day you're talking about AI and ChatGPT, and the third day you talk about leadership or whatever it might be, right? Maybe you are super passionate about these things and maybe you haven't really found your thing yet. Then you can absolutely talk about these things to see what sticks with your audience. But if you are a business owner, try to focus on a thing and then talk about that, because that will also make it so much easier for you to create content around that specific thing, whatever that might be for you. The last piece is so Leslie says, it's your immediate standard, very difficult, especially how old am I? Not sure if you refer to the profile picture or whatever it might be, but yeah. Okay, so the last piece of the framework is that we have now created content that converts. We know how to engage. We know how to connect with people, how important the connections are, and you have an optimized profile. But that alone doesn't turn people into clients. You also need to have a sales mindset and a sales approach on social media and on LinkedIn. And then the thing here is to think in terms of we've all gotten those cold pitches, where you accept a connection request and you're like, immediately you get this gut feeling that this person is going to pitch me. You don't want to be that person. Instead, think in terms of creating a relationship, but not like dragging it out forever and ever and ever, because then you might lose the whole helping them solve the problem. Because if they don't know that you are a specialist in your field, they might not think about that you are the right person for them to actually help them solve the problem. So when we talk about sales mindset and approach, what we are thinking here is that you think in terms of that sales is service. You're helping someone to solve a problem. So I reached out to someone last week, I think it was, and I said, I think you would be fantastic for my program. And he felt a little bit offended. He thought I was pitching him. And I was like, well, in theory, I was I was inviting you to join my program. However, if you would have had this problem, then I think you would have been perfect. He didn't acknowledge that he didn't have the problem, but he didn't feel that he also didn't decide to join my program. So you can always make the invitations, but it's up to the people if they actually want to join you or not, right? But if you don't make any invitations, then no one is going to show up or join your programs either. It's always about if you don't ask, right? If you don't ask, you won't get. So we need to build up this sales mindset that it is okay to ask, and you will get no's. Because if you don't get any no's, you probably haven't asked enough times, right? So the more no's you get, the sooner you will also get to the yes. So the switch we need to make here is about confident invitations. It's not about pushing, it's not about pitching, it is about guiding your audience into making a buying decision. So if we then look at these 5 different steps, we look at content that converts. So if you would scale yourself from a 1 to 10, would you that, and 10 is the best. 10 is like top notch. You are Mel Robbins of Mel Robbins of everything. So if we then look at content that converts, for example, would you scale yourself a 1 or a 10 or anything in between? If we look at the strategic engagement, do you know how to strategically engage? Do you know how to turn those comments, that viral post, into sales? If you look about high quality connections, would you say that your audience consists of high quality connections? Or is it rather maybe a very small audience, or is it like loads of people, but they're not really engaging? If we look at your profile, is it optimized? Is it really optimized? Do really people know what it is that you do and who you do it for and why you're doing it? I think that why is so important too. And when we talk about the sales mindset and approach, would you say that you're a top 10 seller, or would you say like, I hate selling, I wouldn't want to do that, I'm a 1? So depending on where you are on this scale, think in terms of, if I could move, just 1 or 2 or 3 steps towards the 10, how different could my LinkedIn presence actually be then? So that is something I would just want to leave with you here. Mel Robbins, yeah, Mel Robbins, or Tony Robbins, if you want to, if we talk about leadership coaching. And Leslie says, brilliantly presented, Josephine. Thank you so much, Leslie, for the lovely feedback. So here is the checklist again. So if you haven't downloaded the checklist, make sure you do so, because that is where I will go through the how to optimize your LinkedIn profile. Of course, you will end up on my email list, but you know how it works. You can always unsubscribe if you want to. That's totally up to you. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat. In the chat. Let me see if I can take away this. Almost took away myself. Okay, take away this one. Okay, so if you have any questions about the 5-step framework, either now or either if you're watching the replay of this, make sure you add them in the chat underneath so that I can go back and I can respond to those questions. This is what I said. It's going to be a weekly live show. Next week, I will present how to create a scalable online offer that sells. So that is my 6-step process that I'm going to share then. I would love to see you there. Oh, by the way, I'm going to give a sneak peek to my LinkedIn Clarity Facebook group tomorrow. So you can, if you want to get ahead of the weekly show, if you want to join the week to get the 6 steps already tomorrow, then make sure you join my LinkedIn Clarity Facebook group. So it's LinkedIn Clarity, and you search on Facebook, and then it pops up. And I would love to see you all there, if not latest next week. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Katja. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Sven. Thank you, Leslie, for being here with me today. And I look forward to seeing you all as soon as possible. Thank you. Bye-bye.